Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Canada rejects China's takeover of an Arctic gold miner. Let's explore! Very interesting news, certainly as shared with me by Chuck and Plata. This comes to us from Bloomberg and really gives us sort of some perspective on how it's about time that we're starting to see Canada and maybe hopefully some of the United States will see that there is certainly a risk in dealing with China in many ways. Trudeau shuts out China again by rejecting Arctic gold deal. Fascinating. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government rejected a plan by China's Shandong Gold Mining Company to acquire a gold miner that operates in the Canadian Arctic, potentially inflaming a diplomatic feud. It actually sounds fairly Trumpian of Mr. Trudeau to do this. Fascinating indeed. TMAC Resources Incorporated owns the Hope Bay Gold Mine in the Northern Territory of Nunavut, an operation that includes a port and airstrips. Shandong, an acquisitive state-backed metal producer, agreed to buy the Toronto-based company for about $150 million in May. In October, TMAC received notice that the government had ordered a national security review. The Canadian miner said late Monday an order had been issued under the Investment Canada Act for Shandong not to proceed with the takeover. Shandong confirmed the rejection in a statement Tuesday, citing a decision made for the purpose of safeguarding national security. Officials in Trudeau's office declined to comment on the move, which comes amid badly frayed ties between Canada and China over the 2018 arrest of top Hawaii Technologies executive on a U.S. extradition request. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian told a briefing in Beijing on Wednesday that Canada should provide an open and non-discriminatory business environment for all companies operating in Canada, including the Chinese ones. Well, that sounds very capitalistic of the communist Chinese. The Chinese embassy in Ottawa sees any politicization of economic cooperation as wrong, the spokesman said by email late Tuesday, calling on the Canadian government to foster a fair market for all foreign investors. And so here we can see rejection. Most TMAC shares drop sharply after Trudeau nixes Chinese takeover. You can see the drop there. A spokesperson for the Canadian ministry said she was restricted in explaining why the Shandong deal was rejected, citing confidentiality provisions of the Investment Act. Canada remains open to investments that create jobs, growth, and access to global trade and value chains and long-term prosperity for Canadians, while protecting Canada's national security interest, Sophie Lambert-Racine said by email Tuesday. That's a very legitimate concern, I feel, for sure. I mean, you think about it, there has been a lot of Chinese investment in Canada and also here in the U.S. as well over the last 20, 30 years. TMAC plunged as much as 19%, the most intraday since March. It was down 11% to $1.16 Canadian as of 12:05 p.m. in Toronto. The shares have declined 70% this year. Security observers have said a sale could be a threat to Canada because it would give China greater access to the Northwest Passage and is close to Canadian early warning radar facilities in the Arctic. Yeah. The Trudeau government's rejection of the deal might not be the end of the story, according to Stephanie Carvin, a professor at Carleton University in Ottawa and former government intelligence analyst. The issue when dealing with state-owned and state-championed enterprises is that when you say no to them, China finds other ways to circumvent the rule of law, she said by phone on Tuesday. If you say no once, it doesn't mean they won't try again in some way. That's true. Very sneaky. Huawei and Akon. The decision and Beijing's reaction to it will be watched closely by other Arctic nations, Carvin said, flagging that Foreign Minister Francois Philippe Champagne had meetings with his Nordic counterparts recently. Canada is not the only country struggling to deal with China in the north. Denmark is particularly concerned, she said, citing Beijing's infrastructure investments in Greenland. Canada-China relations soured sharply 2 years ago when police detained Hawaii Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou at Vancouver's airport. She has confirmed she has been confined to the Pacific Coast city since then, fighting extradition. In the days after her arrest, China jailed two Canadians on espionage charges and halted billions of dollars in agricultural imports. I think in many ways they're trying to use Canada to get to us here in the United States. There are very keen and clever, China is. I watched a documentary recently talking about how they may have really influenced even our election here, and with some of the acquisitions and some of the moves that they have made, for sure. Russia as well is very clever in that regard too, but I think China takes it to a different level here. Even before the Hawaii, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. Before this case flared, China was warning of an investment chill in Canada after Trudeau's government rejected a takeover of Toronto-based construction giant Akon Group Incorporated, citing national security concerns. Yeah, and that's just it. Real estate holdings that China's been involved in the United States, Canada, and other factors. Bit by bit, piece by piece. That's how they want to try to get influence, especially with all these state-run companies. They can use these companies as fronts for their nefarious purposes, in my view. And again, that's not to say anything about the Chinese people. I believe they're victims of this to a degree here, and it's just a matter of how this is occurring. And I mean, it sounds like that Justin Trudeau is starting to see this and take action, and actually rather Trumpian action, believe it or not, it sounds like. But nonetheless, it is very interesting and fascinating news here. Thanks again to Chuck and Plata for sharing it with me. And it goes to show you, especially understanding how there could be two purposes here on why they would want to do this, is they probably do want to use this company to buy out this Arctic gold to actually mine gold, to further their coffers, because they know that they've been adding more to their reserves, and because they want to separate themselves as much as possible, I think, from the dollar in due course. They want to utilize it to their advantage, obviously, but I think the key is that gold is a great equalizer among the currencies and among the powers out there, and the economic powers and even military powers. World gold was central in many cases in World War II. Hitler wanted to get the gold from these European nations. It was a big trek of escape of gold to the United States by France and other countries, United Kingdom, back then. And I think that China has learned probably from that, and they want to try to get as much gold as possible. And so they're using these companies to get it. That's number one. Number two, national security measures. Well, they have access to put infrastructure and things in place in the Arctic that gives them much closer proximity to probably their biggest enemy, and that is the United States. And they're trying to use Canada as much as possible. Trudeau, I think, is recognizing that threat and cites this national security concern, although not in detail, but probably has seen evidence of something for the infrastructure and proximity and having that aspect based off of their location in the Arctic on this side. So interesting indeed. It'll be fascinating to see how this transpires. It certainly does sour relations between Canada and China, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in my view, and obviously Justin Trudeau feels the same way. So there you go. Thanks again to Chuck and Plata for sharing this with me, and I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.